Welcome back to Honestly Hannah, a podcast hosted by me, Hannah Coda, where I share all my honest opinions about all things going on in the world. I'm treating this podcast like a diary, and trust me, I have a lot to say. Welcome to this week's episode. So this week, I'm going to be talking about UFOs, and I know this is a little off-brand for me, but also not really. So I put this on the agenda, and I put this on, my things to talk about this week, because it intrigues me. I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks back, the last week of June going into the first week of July, and I was listening to this podcast, and then they mention that there was a report that came out from our National Intelligence Department, of our government, that they released on June 25th, 2021, of potential UFO sightings. When I was listening to this podcast, mind you, it's not a scientific podcast, it's more just a comedic type podcast, and I was like, what? I was like, there's no way that this actually happened. There's no credible sources in this podcast. What are they talking about? And they're saying it's a 100-page report, and basically the US is saying that they are not confirming or denying that there is some type of extraterrestrial life out there, but that here's the report, do with it what you may, and keep it pushing. And I was like, wait. So that really just intrigued me. I was like, there can't be a report. Did this really just publish? So I literally just went to Google and I typed in UFOs, ? And US. And it was true. On June 25th, the US government released a small report. So there's a really long one that I found that's about 100 pages, which is what my podcast was talking about that I was listening to. And then there's a shorter, summed down version of it. I looked at both of them. Obviously I prefer the shorter Cliff Notes version because it's a lot more to the point. But yes, and every major news source, literally anything from Fox to CNN to MSNBC to ABC to NBC, every single news outlet had a piece on this that released the same day as the report. So it was anticipated. I know I've talked about this back a couple weeks ago about how the government supposedly, I guess there was a order that Trump or some type of legislation that he put in around October 2020 of that the government needs to start sharing any type of national security issue with us and be more, I guess, just open about it. And that was signed in, and Biden did not, choose to go against it or anything. So as of June 1st, 2021, they started to release more information about national security threats. Now, it could be anything regarding extraterrestrial life or UFO sightings, or what they're calling UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, which is what I'll be referring to for the most part this entire time of what I'm actually talking about. They have to start releasing this information to the public. So this is going to start coming out, and the date that they released this report again was June 25th, which is almost at this point almost a month ago. And yeah, so I, just to give a little background, I really wanted to do my research with this topic. I just didn't want to just start talking about, whatever. Not that I do that in other episodes, but I really, really wanted to try to understand what exactly was released, because it sounds like this kind of stuff is not going away. And the government is just, at least the US government is kind of just going to put it out there and see how people respond, and really, I guess, just not make it a big thing. I don't know. But in preparation for this episode, I read the actual article that was released from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. I have the article right here on my phone, which I'll be referring to. I took some notes. So I read the actual article that was released, both the long version and the short version. And then I also read pretty much any like news article I can find from all over the spectrum. News articles that, may lean one way or the other. I read both sides. I also watched a couple interviews on YouTube of supposed like experts, people in academia that have been studying, this type of counterintelligence. I don't know what you would call it. I know that there's some universities that have like certain departments for any like weird stuff like this. And yeah, so I really tried to do my research on this. So what I'll be sharing is mostly directly from the report, because I really just watched those videos and read those other articles just to help me understand. I just wanted to make sure like I got what I was supposed to get from it. So I'm just going to really kind of give you guys the cliff notes and really just explain why this is so interesting to me. And yeah, if you guys just want to hear a little bit about it. So, like I said, the report was released on June 25th from the Office of Director of National Intelligence. It is called Preliminary Assessment, the report that I'm going to be referring to, Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, which they basically are using instead of UFOs. So UFOs stands for Unidentified Foreign Object, which they chose not to use in this report. In my personal opinion, from what I saw on like how people were reporting on this, I think they just wanted to stay away from the acronym UFO as well as, unidentified foreign object, because it is not synonymous, I guess, from what I read in the report and what they're trying to inform us about. So they use UAP, which is unidentified aerial phenomena, meaning that, they're not saying it's a UFO, but they're also not saying it's not a UFO. And so they made another term so that it is more, I guess, umbrella termed, rather than, trying to freak everybody out like, yeah, this is the report about UFOs. So I think it was more of like a political move, in my personal opinion, like, hey guys, like, yeah, we're going to release this report. It's not about UFOs, but it could also be about UFOs, so we're going to call it UAP. So that's my like just personal take about it. So yeah, so they do give some bullet points right at the beginning of the report. They kind of break it down into bullet points. These bullet points basically say like, yes, we are sharing this information to you, to the public. It's unclassified. We are releasing this information to you on June 25th, 2021. These are high quality reports. So basically saying like, these are credible. We're not trying to like trick you or anything, or trying to put in there that some, that this is fake, or we're just putting stuff out there. It says that there were a total of 144 sightings of unidentified aerial phenomenons between the years of 2004 and 2021. So when I first started reading this report, I was like, okay, I kept seeing the name or the number 144, 144. Then I started seeing 143, and I was like, okay, well, that's actually like a lot of sightings, or that's like a lot of stuff. But then also, I was so surprised that it was so like close to this time period, because I feel like whenever we hear about UFOs and just like any like extraterrestrial or whatever sightings or anything weird, it's always coming out of like or any documentaries. If you've watched any documentaries on Netflix or on TV, or anything like in regarding to this subject, it's always like sightings from like the 70s, 80s, like way back when. Obviously not way back when, but it's not any time like near where we're actually at, and it's people that have come forward after years of like being scared to come forward about their sightings or their encounters or whatever. So when I read from 2004 to 2021, I was like, okay, so like this is like legit, like this was, these people are obviously all still alive, like, whoever saw them, the military, like they're here for the most part. And then it goes on to state that there were originally 144 cases when they were putting these reports together. However, one of them was solved, and could be, tucked into a file and put away, as it is not a UAP. it was identified as not UAP. I think it was like some type of drone system from a different country, but 143 of the original 144 reports, it can't I mean, they're still unclaimed, and that's why they're still in this UAP category, essentially. And they also go on to state that all of these sightings and all of these reports do represent physical objects. However, there may be some defects in their censoring, weapon seekers, as well as the visual observation that was made either by the military, most of these are by the military, or those reporting UAP. So they do kind of give, in any like scientific report, I'm sure we've all done a lab report. We know that there are, variables that could affect the scientific experiment. So they're just mentioning them here, that it could have been their sensors. So for most of these reports, it is a flying object. Again, they didn't want to say UFOs, but most of them are flying objects. Like literally a good majority of them are flying objects, and obviously UAP, but I mean a couple of them were found closer to like surface level, so those I don't really count, but those that were way up in the sky were really only like high technology, like military jets could get them. Or like they're just saying like, hey, their sensors might have been off, or the military that was like actually, visualizing and seeing these objects, not really making sense of what they were seeing. That could also be a subject, or it could also be a variable that threw these reports off. So they're just mentioning like, hey, it also could be human error. It could be technological error. And they're just mentioning that so that later down the road, basically they're just like saving their asses. Later down the road, if they end up being like, oh yeah, it was a sensor error, they can be like, well, we did say that was a possibility. So going down more, also the whole report is a little, not even a little, but like it is difficult to read and difficult to like get over certain jargon. I will say that even in the shorter report. And then finally, like one of the last like main bullet points is that they have stated that most of these are not a flight issue or pose any challenge to the U.S. And the U.S. national security like force. So they are releasing these knowing that these were not a threat. And yeah, basically the rest of the report just basically says they have limited data on these 143 sightings, and that most of the reports are inconclusive, and that's why they've put it in this category of UAP. Of the 144 original reports, 80 reports involved observation with multiple sensors, meaning that at least, about half of them really had some validity to it, meaning that there were multiple people who saw it. There were multiple machines that detected it on their sensors. So at least half of them we can say are, pretty serious, and we should probably take these, really into some thought and have some people study it. Also, most reports described as UAP are objects that interrupted pre-planned training or other military activity, which I thought this was really interesting because basically they're saying like they didn't go looking for it. There's not like some, Area 51 task force that goes out and tries to look for like alien intelligence or whatever, or like UFOs or whatever. Basically, the military was already in these places and they saw something weird while they were up doing these routine trainings. I'm like, okay, sure. You guys had to go ahead and put that in there. Also, they do mention, with a lot of these visual interpretations and visual observations, they do put in the report that there is a cultural or sociocultural stigma that also limits them to these deposition that there is like something weird out there. So like and I feel like it happens to us all the time whenever we see something weird in the sky. We're always like, oh my God, what is that? And our mind, I feel like, immediately goes to like, oh, those are aliens, or that's something weird. Or I feel like our brains don't like, at least mine don't. I feel like our brains don't automatically go like, oh yeah, that they're probably like, the military's probably testing something, or like, whatever. So they had to put that in there as well, that there is, again, some human error within these reports. The next part of the report basically states that, yes, there are 143 like confirmed UAP cases. However, most of them do not have a single explanation behind them, meaning that, yeah, like there's all these cases, but it could have just been one thing. It could have been multiple sightings of one object. Also, not only that, it could have also been cameras that were wrong, sensors that were wrong, people that were wrong, all at the same time. And they're still vetting all of those variables. So also under the same category of that, these UAP sightings are probably not going to be a single explanation. They give different categories of what they are trying to put these UAP sightings into. So like I said at the beginning, there were 144 original like cases of UAP, and now there are 143. They were able to solve one of them. When they get to a point where they can start solving all of these basically unsolved aerial phenomenons, they are going to try to put them in the following categories. So there are 5 categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomenon, USG or industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, or other. Basically, they're going to try to put all of the 143 cases into one of these categories. Airborne clutter could be anything from like, it could have been a bird or a balloon or an unmanned aerial vehicle, basically that was not approved to fly in that area. Or it could be something like ice crystals or some type of moisture or something that doesn't normally come up on our radar systems. Or it could be just like another country like China or Russia or another nation developing technologies that we were unaware of. And then it gives like an other. So an other category, meaning that it's unidentified and due to our limited data and collection, processing, or analysis, that they are going to require additional information. So they kind of thought of everything in this report, a resolution in a sense. I'm going to talk a little bit later about another like resolution they give to help solve these cases essentially, but they're going to try to put them into these categories of like, yeah, guys, like it's not aliens. It's actually like, it was just a bird, like a really fast bird. So they are going to try to like quote unquote solve these cases. Just a couple like quick interesting facts before we go towards the end of the report. 18 incidents in 21 of the reports were observed as unusual movement patterns or flight characteristics. So there were a total of 21 like unidentified aircrafts basically out of the 143 that were reported. Again, it doesn't really do a major breakdown, but out of those 21, 18 of them were making unusual movements that were unexplained, meaning that they're going at a speed that is just like off the charts, and they're also making quick and fast turns and movements that are not really making any sense, which I thought was like super interesting. Also, that 11 reports of documented instances where pilots reported near misses with the UAP. So out of 143, 11 of them basically got smacked in the face, potentially like by someone in our military, or one of our pilots really, which would be in our military, because most of these sightings were through our military, which I thought is kind of crazy. Like, imagine you getting hit by one of those things. You kind of almost wish that you would get hit because you're like, okay, well, what is this? Like, I have to know what this is. So, yeah, I just thought that those were pretty interesting. And now going towards the end of the report, they also state at the end of the report that if you really want the US government to figure out what these things are, they will need a resource investment, meaning that they need more money from the government, which this is the government, posting them or whatever. But basically that they need more money to find out what actually are like these 143 objects. And then it also mentions that there is a very big possibility that it is technology that is not in the US. So basically at the end of the report, I'm like on like page 8 or 9 right now, on the report. At the very end, it basically says that yes, we're saying that these are UAP sightings or these are UAP cases for the US, meaning that, yeah, like it could very much well be this. It could also be like another government with, higher technology or more advanced technology that we don't know about, that we're flying over US borders and US land, so we have to check it out. But in reality, we can't say one way or the other. They really try to push this report to say, look, like this is what it is. Take it as you will. If you want to say that there aren't some explanations for things that are humanly possible right now, and you want to say that it's extraterrestrial life or some type of aerial phenomenon, then go ahead. But it also could be another country developing technology and trying to utilize it and putting it through testing over the US, which a lot of people, I was reading some comments and they're like, well, that sounds a lot more likely than like extraterrestrial life and aliens, guys. And yeah, basically the very last thing that says recommendations regarding increased collection of data, enhanced research and development, additional funding, and other resources are the only way that they're going to be able to confirm or deny these 143 cases, and that and more that are coming. They didn't say like if maybe some sightings happened over one, like more in one year than the other, but 150-ish cases in what, like about 15 years is really, I feel like that is a lot. They also in this report didn't really give a specific location of where in the US most of these sightings were at. I couldn't really find it in any of my reports. They didn't give a specific location. However, they did say these were on military training, so it's where the military is based at. That was one thing that I was really trying to find in any of the reports, that was like, was there one central location where maybe all of these sightings happened? And it just sounds like it's all over the country, based anything that could be in the US. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. I know earlier this year there was a video that came out that was like all over Twitter and Instagram and all of the social medias of literally some random thing flying in the air and going at speeds that are not humanly, but like we're not there in technology yet. However, we're not there in the US, but we have absolutely no idea what other countries around the world may be working up. So it really could go either way here. It's really what you are going to take from this. I just think it's super interesting that the US is starting to release this type of information, and I'm really interested to see what they have to say about extraterrestrial life in general, because I feel like a lot of the times we see aliens, right, in movies, and we have this idea of what aliens could be, but I have a feeling when we get there one day, there obviously, in my personal opinion, is other life out there. However, I don't think it looks like anything that we could ever imagine. And life is a simple cell, an organism. And yeah, it can look very different. I mean, look at our Earth right now and all of the living things. So that's what I consider extraterrestrial life, not like the typical alien thing that we would see in movies. but anything that is like living and can be defined as living is extraterrestrial life. And I really do think that the next coming years, at least I hope so, we're going to get more reports like this, and they won't be so ambiguous. At least I'm really hoping, and that they'll be able to at least define what they are seeing and what can we start getting excited about. I don't know. But yeah, so that was the little, Cliff Notes version of the report. Like I said, there's a lot of differing opinions on what UAP reports are valid or not, and, what exactly are we looking at here. But either way, I still find it super interesting, and I hope that you did too. I'm going to move on, just a little rant about a show that I've been watching about. So if anybody's been watching Manifest, I'm going to talk about it for a couple minutes. So yeah, if you want to listen to that, stay tuned. Okay, so this also just kind of wraps into this week's episode, and I'm also obsessed right now, so I feel like I just need to talk about it. So, like most people, at least from what I heard on the internet, everybody kind of got sucked in to this show called Manifest. It was originally, I believe, on NBC or like of NBC, and it just got bought off by Netflix, and it was like the #1 trending show for like a week. I originally wanted to watch this show when it came out, like in 2017, 2018, or whatever it was, because I saw the main character of another show I really like called Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time was a show that was on ABC, I don't know, for like 10 years or something. I binged that on Netflix when Netflix bought it, and I absolutely love that show. The main character was Josh Dallas, and Josh Dallas is now the main character of the show called Manifest, which is literally the original reason why I wanted to watch it. Never got around to it until I see it on Netflix and trending, right? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I wanted to watch this anyways because of him. Yeah, like, let me just watch it. I know the premise. So here's like where the spoiler alerts start coming. So if you haven't seen Manifest and you want to see Manifest, I suggest you clicked off this episode now. Come back to it when you watch it and you want to watch it. But basically, the whole premise of it is actually a really cool idea. This family, half of a family, gets on a plane that was originally not supposed to be their flight. Their original flight got overbooked, and the airline was like, hey guys, we have this other flight. We'll pay you, which airlines do sometimes. We'll pay you to get on this other flight because we messed up. So here's a voucher, get on this other plane at a different time. And it's usually like a huge inconvenience to the passenger, but it happens, They are flying from Jamaica to New York. And yeah, half of this family gets on the plane, obviously with 190 other people. And they go up in the sky, and when they land, it's 5.5 years later. And that's just kind of where the story starts. And then it goes on and on and on. As the episodes start rolling in, it honestly just gets worse and worse and worse, but it's like a good bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those like shows that just like pulls you in, and you're like, this doesn't make any logical sense. This is horrible writing. This is horrible casting. But why can I not stop watching it? It's one of those shows. It's been like less than a week, and I'm already almost done with season 2, and there's only 3 seasons. And from what I hear from other podcasts and other people, it doesn't end like with a cool like rounding out story, because they didn't think that they were going to get canceled. So I think the whole point of Netflix trying to put it as trending, whether people were watching it or not, was to see if the people wanted another season to kind of close it out, because I believe it just ended this year in 2021. So it still would make sense if, Netflix backs it and they can start on a new season. But yeah, so I'm going to be really sad when this ends, but whatever. Basically, when they get off the plane, they start hearing these voices, and everybody at first thinks it's like God telling them to do something. But they end up calling them the callings, and basically the callings are telling them to do things, and it helps them save people. I don't know why, but for some reason, it 100% gives me feels of like the same type of like feeling as Ghost Whisperer. If any of you watched that way back when with Jennifer Love Hewitt, it was like early 2000s show. But when I watch it, it's like that same feeling of like, this is not really a good show. This is not really good writing. This is not good acting. But there's something about it that just makes me want to watch the next episode. And I'm sucked in, and I really like it right now. I'm in a really good place. The beginning of season 2 was like, but the end of season 1 was great. But the beginning of season 2, I was like, okay, I don't like where the story's going, but whatever. And now I'm like mid season 2, almost at the end of season 2, and they're kind of wrapping it back together. And it's still kind of the same premise. They go on basically these little journeys and challenges each episode, and it is very like extraterrestrial vibes, like aliens are controlling them or they don't know where they went for 5 years. So it's like, is there a time loop? Were they stuck in the sky? Like, it's just like this weird like type feeling, but there's also a little drama, there's like multiple love stories going on. And I'm just really enjoying it right now. If you've watched all of Manifest, please don't tell me the ending. I will let you guys know when I finish. And I'll probably be devastated because, again, I've heard that it doesn't round itself out. They don't close it. There's no closure. You don't get like a nice happy ending. So we'll see. But this is my recommendation, and this is me telling you guys to go watch Manifest, but with not high expectations that it's going to be a good show. It's just one of those like guilty pleasure shows that, you just turn on a Sunday afternoon, just let it play the whole day while you're doing laundry or you're cleaning, and you just watch the entire day and you kind of see some parts and you kind of don't, but it still kind of makes sense at the end of the episode. It's a really good guilty pleasure show. And yeah, that was this week's episode. I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope that you guys enjoyed me talking about UAPs for a little bit, that you learned something this week. That's always, my goal, to learn something, to laugh a little, and also just get a little piece of my mind. I am treating this podcast like a diary. So this is where I'm at right now. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a review. I'll see y'all next week. If you are I don't even want to say it. I don't want to say it. But if you are a directioner, oh God, I hate that word. I absolutely despise that word. Go ahead and listen to next week's episode. It's gonna be it's gonna be a mess, to say the least. But you'll hear me talk about something I'm very passionate about. So there's gonna be some drama. There's gonna be some laughs. So make sure to tune in next week. Thank you so much for listening. And this was Honestly Hannah.